This is the Wait For It podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Wait For It podcast. I'm your co-host, Phil Barrera, aka Phil the Filipino.
And I'm your other co-host, Mr. Eric Almighty. And for this edition of International Feature, we are going back to last year to talk about the best international film and the one that won an Oscar in 2024. And that movie is I'm Still Here.
And thank goodness it won that award. If you do not remember the chaos that was the Emilia Perez debacle, if you want to hear our thoughts on that film, you can go back into the podcast and listen to that one. But we are going to be talking about a much better film here today. Like you said, Eric, with 2024's I'm Still Here, directed by Walter Salles. I should have looked that up ahead of time, but here we are. We're recording and it's happening. But yeah, Eric, obviously very, very heavy subject matter when it comes to I'm Still Here. And I went into it relatively blind. I knew that it was taking on a very, very serious subject, as well as a true story, but didn't really know like the true depth or the backstory of what went into it until I actually sat down and started watching it and also doing a little bit of research. So we're going to talk about that here today. If you want to know where you can find the rest of our content, as well as follow us on social media and get some additional perks, perhaps, then make sure you stick around to the very end of the episode. We will go over all of that. But let's get into it here, Eric. The synopsis of the film: in 1971, military dictatorship in Brazil reaches its height. The Paiva family, Rubens, Eunice, and their 5 children live in a beachside house in Rio, open to all their friends. One day, Rubens is taken for questioning and does not return. So once again, this is based off of a true story of Eunice Paiva, and played by, we'll start here, Eric, just the absolute force that is Fernanda Torres. She came away with quite a few awards and a ton of recognition for this performance, and I just want to start right there because she is outstanding in this. And a lot of dramatic roles, whether it be fiction or nonfiction, a lot of people find value in those roles, I think, for the very loud, dramatic moments where, there's you can see a lot of pain and suffering, but also hear a lot of pain and suffering within those characters. And I think what makes Eunice, obviously being in real life, a powerhouse of her own, what makes this performance so memorable is her suffering in silence, but also her taking action in silence. And I was really happy that we finally got to see this performance from Fernanda Torres.
100%. That's really the reason, Phil, when you brought this up, that I was even interested in seeing it, because I had seen a couple of clips here and there, and I was like, man, she's good. She's good. I also wanted to know, did Zoe Saldana steal an award from her? Spoiler alert, she did. She did. As much as we love her as an actress, not in that movie. Not in that movie. But I didn't know anything about this movie, Phil, going into it. As far as the topic, I could kind of guess based off the trailer, what we were dealing with. But again, understanding that this was like a true story and the real backstory behind it, it's all driven through Fernanda Torres' performance, and I mean, just a powerhouse, absolute powerhouse. That is one of my favorite performances of a film that I saw last year, and is probably going to be one of our biggest talking points in the spoiler-free section. Like, this movie did come out last year. We'll probably open up a spoiler spot at the end. Although, Phil, this movie, I don't want to say it's straightforward, but I mean, it kind of is. Once you hear that synopsis, you kind of have an idea of where this is going.
Yeah, it's also, a true story. So if you want, you can Google Eunice Paiva and figure out what happens and how we got here in this film. I will say one of the things that I really, really enjoyed is how much time they spent just kind of getting to know this family. And in the beginning, again, knowing like a little bit about what this was about, I was kind of like confused as to where does this all tie in? What is going to be the tipping point of this film where we get into what the actual issue is? And once that did happen, I had a better understanding of, that's why we spent so much time getting to know these kids, getting to spend so much time with their relationships and the complexity of of all of them, and how these two parents, have done everything for their children to give them this wonderful life. They live in this beautiful home right on the beach, and it just seems like everything is so great. But it's always right underneath the surface. They're at the beach, and like a military convoy drives by, right? In the very beginning of the movie, she's driving around with her friends, and then they get stopped at a checkpoint, right? So amongst the beauty of the setting that is Rio, that thread is always so present. So the way that this is, because they could have really just kind of dove into the whole crux of the movie in terms of where this all takes a turn. They could have done that really right away because it is a historical film and because all of this actually happened. But getting to know the Paiva family was a big highlight for me.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And then I want to go to your point about the tension in the film and some of the things they did to build that tension. I thought it was extremely successful, especially in that first half of the film. So the first act going into the second act, I thought that tension building is what kept this to be, this kept it from being disinteresting. And it made me invested in seeing what was going to happen with this family that you are kind of growing, maybe not an attachment to per se, but you are starting to really appreciate. And I really like that about this movie. I also really enjoyed the cinematography here. This doesn't look like a movie that was filmed in 2024. That's kind of the aesthetic they're going for. They do the recorder footage here and there. They risk using that maybe one too many times for my liking, but those did help add to the element of this is more of a grounded filmmaking. And the fact that this is a Brazilian film, and to my understanding, they haven't gotten much love anytime recently. So getting an Oscar nomination was huge, let alone a win for Best International Film. I like that we got to add this type of a movie to our catalog for this particular series.
Yep, and you're alluding to the Super 8 footage that is used in the film. I did like that. It kind of gives you an intimacy with the family and kind of gets you to see things through their eyes. But yeah, really solid performances all around as well, from the really kind of trying to understand probably how terrified those kids were. And once again, they live, I don't want to say it was a totally privileged lifestyle, but compared to just knowing what we know, which is very little about Brazil and kind of the economics down there, seem to live a pretty perfect life in terms of what you want. They walk across the street to the beach, to the ocean. That's a nightmare for you and I, but for this family who loves the beach, just an idyllic way to probably grow up, especially in that time, and for someone who, as far as Rubens Paiva, learning more about his story and knowing and learning that he just cared so much that he put himself at risk, is something that is just really, really fascinating. And like you said, Eric, I'm really happy that this is a film that we have now been able to add to our library. For not to compare and contrast, because obviously they're totally different, but feeling totally different after watching this as compared to Taxi Driver, which is another film. I think years from now, I'm Still Here will probably live in, in terms of the cinematography and the film crowd. They'll probably talk about I'm Still Here, hopefully in 20 years, the same way that we now talk about, a lot of them talk about Taxi Driver, where we just kind of felt kind of icky after Taxi Driver, right? And coming away from this, yes, it is still a devastating story, but knowing that this this badass woman was just I'm going to go back to school and I'm going to fix this, and it's going to take me some time, but knowing more about her and the story is, I'm just to echo again, really happy that we now know about it.
For sure. And I mean, the fact that Taxi Driver was the last episode that we did before this one, it's fresh on our minds, which is why it's coming up here. A much different film and a much different reception, I think, for both of us, but especially me when it comes to I'm Still Here. And, the thing about this movie, Phil, it's not perfect, and I think we'll transition into maybe some criticisms. But I think the thing that I really took away from this was just how much better it was than Emilia Perez. Just so much better. And
you know what I'm Still Here needed? Some rap.
Some rap. Penis and vagina.
Some rapping.
Yeah. It's rough. It's rough. It's rough to see a film like this get as much recognition as it could for being the international film that came out last year that wasn't Emilia Perez. And that really pisses me off a little bit because, like, Emilia Perez took the news cycle. I feel like this film deserved that attention that Emilia Perez got. And it just really upsets me that there are people in the world that actually thought that movie was better than this one. So, yeah. I am ready, Phil, to talk personally about a couple of gripes that I had with the film. They're very, very specific things that I think may be better explained in the spoiler section, but I will at least bring them up high level. Did you have anything else from a positive standpoint that you wanted to touch on? Again, we could go back and talk maybe another 15 minutes about Fernanda Torres. So if I was to say anything else, is just to go back to that point. She is amazing. Everybody's amazing. It feels like a real family. The performances are great. I can't quite put what she did or what the direction was for her character to come off the screen in that way, but it was powerful. It really was.
It makes you, you come away from it wanting to watch more of her and learn more about her. And, even in some of the interviews that I watch, like, she just commands your attention. And it doesn't surprise me that translates off the screen as much as it does on the screen. So yeah, she is just so fantastic. To go back to, unfortunately, to bring up Emilia Perez, remember, there is a chance that some voters didn't even watch this, which should make you even angry.
Yes, it does. They watched one international film and voted on that category, and it was like Emilia Perez.
Exactly.
Zoe Saldana was great.
Oh, I like that. I like that song. They're like doing a little dance to like Selena Gomez, like that. So that should make you even angrier. The fact that they had to implement a rule that if they find out you haven't watched all the Oscar films, you can't vote just now. Like, how is that just now? Because we have a podcast where with a much smaller audience than the Oscars,
and that's like our rule.
And we're like, well, we're not going to talk about it if we haven't seen it.
If we haven't seen it, yeah.
Imagine we did this 6 months ago, and we were like, yeah, I don't know, Emilia Perez is probably better. How much music is in I'm Still Here?
I didn't see them singing in the trailer. Yeah, that's a tough time. I don't want to be too nitpicky, but there are a couple things with this movie that I think drag it down from being great. Like, I really enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed it. And these might be more nitpicky things. I'm going to start with the one that maybe bothered me the most that I kind of hold against this movie, and it's the runtime. The movie's 2 hours and 14 minutes, and on the surface, that doesn't sound like a long time. Phil, I don't know how you felt. This movie drags in that third act. Now, some things happen in that third act. We'll talk about that in the spoiler section maybe a little bit more as far as the time that all of that takes place. But I just think, Phil, this movie it could have been condensed to maybe an hour 45. That's like 30 minutes of runtime, which is kind of that third act. Like, that third act could have been a montage, in my opinion. So I'm curious what you thought about it, because once we take that turn and there is a little bit of a time jump situation, I don't know, I just felt much more disinterested in it. And that's probably my biggest gripe with the film, that third act is not nearly as strong as the first two. When it comes to the tension building and all of that, there's not also much of a resolve, and I understand that's the story, but I don't know, it just, from a film perspective, it left me feeling a little disappointed at the end, as far as enjoying the journey, but not necessarily the destination.
So I think you could probably keep the film the same length and maybe give us more in terms of how did school go for her? How did all of this process go with trying to, once democracy was reinstated in Brazil, why did it take her 25 years to get this death certificate, and that's that part of the film. And then also seeing the actual picture of Eunice Paiva with the death certificate is so powerful. And I think, getting to see maybe the kids grow up a little bit. Like, remember, there was like a little bit of emotional whiplash because the son has had an accident, and we don't know anything about that. We know that he has written a book about it, and he's talked about his story. But I was like, did I miss something? Like, what happened? So I think maybe keep the story at the same length, but I would have liked to know how different their life was once they had to leave Rio. and what went into that decision. Like, how difficult was it for a mother of 5 to go to school full time to become this, this lawyer and get all this done? I would have liked to know a little bit more about that, as opposed to the massive 2 time jumps we get. So again, it's 25 years is a long time. They're getting the death certificate, and then again, we see the part at the end. I did like the end in terms of seeing all the family together. I think but I think it will work even better if we know, because there's only 2 kids in the jump ahead. So like, what's everybody else up to? I'd have also liked to know that. So maybe even if it is a little bit shorter, if you did cut 10-15 minutes, but just seeing more of their life after they had left their home, which I can only imagine was incredibly difficult. Like, there's a really good scene in that act where they're talking about when did they bury their father, like in their head. And I really, really like that discussion between the 2 of them, because I can't even imagine what type of just how that would feel in terms of dealing with someone who's missing, and you can't ever really put them to rest physically, so you have to do it in their mind. So I think expanding upon that, maybe you would have felt a little bit differently. What do you think?
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. This is gonna sound bad. I don't mean it in a negative way, but like, I kind of understand why they dramatize stories like this.
Sure.
Like from an entertainment value of like consuming the medium or the media that's being presented, because like you're saying you couldn't imagine it, and like in my head I'm like, well, they could have shown us that. Like, they could have shown us. I think a lot of this I'm going to have to elaborate in the spoiler section, but what happened during that time jump, you're focused on her, like, as far as the schooling and all that. And I'm thinking like, well, there had to have been some conversations, and I think there would have been some real drama in those conversations, some heart-wrenching drama that you really could have displayed with these characters, and we just didn't get that. So I'll leave a lot of my like direct thoughts on it for the spoiler portion, which I can't imagine is going to be long, but I still recommend that you check out this film to make your own opinion. And Phil, I guess I'll kind of transition it over to you. Were there any nitpicky or big items that you wanted to address as far as the criticisms, or things that could have gone better?
There weren't really too many that I could come away with. Now, in my score, I didn't give this like a perfect score or anything like that, but yeah, I think really I kind of just addressed it, like just wanting to know a little bit more, and also spending a little bit more time with the kids, like leaving that home and essentially, I think in their minds, like admitting defeat kind of was probably really, really difficult. And I can only imagine that, tensions were already high in a home where they had quite a bit of space and quite a bit of, room to move around. And they seemed to have moved into an even more cramped position. Sounded like they were moving in with like their grandparents, and, how much of a strain would that have put on their relationships, where everybody was already very emotionally just worn out and drained. And, learning a little bit more maybe as well about Rubens and how he was helping out this resistance, like learning a little bit more about that. I will just to counter my own argument. I do think that having it be a secret from also the audience is a good choice, but at the same time, I would like to know more about what he was doing, just on the, outside of the scope of what we saw.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And I think there's more to be had in the spoiler part of that conversation. So I think transitioning here to the reception of this film, our scores, and then, talking about spoilers will be a good way to kind of put a little bow on this episode. But I think we're probably ready to have that dialogue. So if you have not seen the film, after our scores, we'll give you that reminder. But let's get into that, Phil, because I am curious where we both landed.
Yeah, let's see where this sits here. Now, unsurprisingly, very, very high scores across the board. Rotten Tomatoes, 97% tomato meter score, and a 97% popcorn meter score. So one of those instances where critics and audiences agree. Over on IMDb, it sits at a 8.3 out of 10. And then over on Letterboxd, it is at a 4.3. So, and a majority of those, Eric, over 50%, 59% of those are 5 out of 5s. And when you look at the reviews, a lot of them are in Portuguese. So I'm sure this resonates so much more with those people and who have ancestors, right, that could still be alive from this time, which is totally insane to think about. So a lot of 5 out of 10s or 5 out of 5s. I gave this a 4 out of 5 for myself. It is certainly one of the better films that we have watched, and also one of the best films from 2024. If I don't know if you added this to your 2024 list, Eric, I did. So if you want to discuss where that landed for us, but yeah, 4 out of 5 for me, and just a movie that you come away from that there's no possible way that I think you could come away from it being upset that you watched it.
Yeah, that's a great way to end that whole statement there, because like it's a movie that I'm glad we added to our catalog, that we watched and we got to discuss. I did not add it to my 2024 list. I did forget. I'm going to do that as we wrap up that conversation. Yeah, I'm going to need a moment to really think about this. So as I focus back up on the score that I gave it, it seems harsh, but the movie had so much going for it in the first half. And I just think that given the circumstances of the film, and we'll elaborate on this a little bit more in a moment in that spoiler section, I think this movie turns into a tension-building, interesting film about a true story. And it's not less interesting because it's a true story in that second half, but the way that it plays out is less interesting. And I wanted to give this movie a 4 as well. And I feel like that being my biggest gripe, being like a 1.5 star deduction, is kind of like insane. But in my gut, this movie is a 3.5. It's probably more of a 3.75. It's just short of that 4-star rating for that reason. Maybe I feel differently on second watch through if I was to ever go around to it. But this movie is also, very sad. It's a very sad story. And do I want to dive into that again? Not really. And I've seen sad movies before that I want to dive into again. So those are probably the two biggest reasons for my particular score. And Phil, as far as 2024 films, where did this rank for you?
I have it at number 11, so right outside the top 10, right behind Dune Part 2 and in front of Twisters.
Yeah, that's crazy. That is crazy. I'm going to put it at 23. Which would put it right under Nosferatu, which is crazy considering how I felt about that movie walking out of the theater, and right above Civil War. Yeah, so I feel like that's a really good spot.
I forget all the time that we saw Civil War, and really I only remember at this point Jesse Plemons. So
yeah,
that movie exists in like a weird plane because it's good.
Kaylee Spaney's great in it though too.
Yeah, that is true. So
and the guy, the main guy
21
in that,
for me, so.
The main guy in that, I'm like, I'm gonna double check this, but I'm like 90% sure he plays Puss in Boots. He plays Death in Puss in Boots. So
Wagner Moura.
Yeah. I'm pretty positive. But
Puss
anyway,
in Boots, take a shot. How did we bring up The Last Wish and I'm still here? That wasn't even on purpose. That one came up organically. There's no way, man. We're not even doing it on purpose anymore.
I don't know what that was. That was crazy.
Anyway, where is it on? I'll go first. My international feature list. I have it ranked number 13 behind Old Boy and in front of Okja.
Yeah, on my list, it is number 18 behind Okja, Decisional Leave, and All Quiet on the Western Front. But right above 28 Days Later, Wolf Walkers, and Wolf Children. So
where's the point now with this list is insane. This list of films that we have is crazy. And obviously there are some that I have higher than you and vice versa, but like this is looking at these movies, it's like crazy.
I know.
And there's Emilia Perez.
We can't stress this enough. Like when it came down to us figuring out like what series we wanted to introduce to the podcast at that time and keep, I just kept thinking like, there are so many international films we didn't get to see. And like, it'd be cool if we get some of you guys along for the ride and maybe we convince you to watch a film and you end up loving it. But like at the end of the day, like this was really for two things. One, to expand our filmography. And then two, to find more films that we could like connect over and we could really appreciate. And man, Phil, like off of this list alone, there are so many films that we either quote or we think of or we reference in other episodes. And it's one of my proudest achievements of decisions that we made on the podcast was this series in particular. Late to the Party is fun. We've also in a way done the same thing there, but international feature specifically is so specific that I think that, you know, it's a real accomplishment. And yeah, I am happy that we made that choice. But we also have spoilers to talk about for this film, so you know what to do here.
You guys know what to do. Listen to the video. For those of you that are on the YouTube audience, get out. Get out. If you have not seen I'm Still Here and you're complaining about subtitles, shut up and go watch the film. You can rent it for like $6 on Amazon Prime. But make sure you go check out the movie before listening to this part. So, yeah, Eric, I mean, like I said, I mean, this is a true story. So how much can we really spoil? So what did you want to discuss here?
Yeah, so, I mean, like, we didn't shy away from it, but I don't think we came out and outright and said it, that Rubens, the husband, the father, does die. He is dead. He's pretty much dead immediately after being taken, pretty quickly.
Which is crazy to learn. Like,
yeah, which is crazy to learn.
So sad to learn. Like,
very sad. The actor that played him, like, very fatherly, like, the performance was great. Again, Fernanda Torres is amazing in this. I just think that she can only carry the film so much without addressing, like, the elephants in the room. Like, I understand the mother aspect of, like, lying to the kids and, hey, smile. But, like, he's gone for, like, a long time. I do think that there is a payoff there of, like, the kids figuring it out, addressing it with her head on, maybe. And again, I know it's based off a true story, but like, what was their reaction? Did they think they might want to do something about this too? Was it just the mother that wanted to do that? I don't know. I just felt like there was meat on the bone of the story that went untouched. And maybe it was because they didn't want to disrespect and dramatize the story by doing that, but I just felt like it made it less interesting as a film. And I think that's my biggest issue, because then the time jumps happen. And in those time jumps, you mentioned it on the episode, the son is in a fucking wheelchair, and we just don't talk about, like, what happened there. We don't see the other children or anybody else that was involved in this story. And I don't know, it almost feels like the story was set up for failure in that aspect with me, because you do learn in the credits that 5 people were charged but never went to prison. So it's not even like you could have like a happy ending in that way. I don't know. I feel like I'm between a rock and a hard place of like respecting this true story and the way it was told versus what I mentioned earlier, like that dramatization that would have enhanced the film and the characters, even though these are characters of real people. To me, they're characters in a movie. So, like, I wanted to see that progression, and I feel like we lost some of that. Even if Fernanda Torres from start to finish was amazing, I just felt like as a film, character-wise, it could have been enhanced in that way.
Yeah, and I'm sure, at least from, like, the very little that I have seen in terms of press that they did, it didn't seem like they were very interested in any type of dramatization, so staying true to the story, being respectful to the source material, and, you know, everything that happens. Also, you know, a story that hits very close to home even in 2025. So probably not wanting to go that. I'm sure all of that played very heavy in terms of the decisions that they made when it comes to this film. I also would have liked to know a little bit more about, like, she has this group of friends that are alluded to as press, but we don't really, we get like the idea, and we can context clues. We know that they're you know, they have to navigate what they do and do not release. And then a little bit later, it seems like a tabloid is there, right? That's not even like a serious news publication. Like, how did that all come to be? So there are things that, and you know, what they're probably doing, Eric, is just encouraging you to go look into the real story. You know, that's I'm sure that is what they want when it comes to this. But for film purposes, like you said, there's just some things we would like expanded upon, especially in that third act. Like I said, like, where are the other kids? You know, what has happened? He's, you know, the son. Even I have learned, like, the son wrote a book. The book is called I'm Still Here, and that was the whole. You know, he had written the book that ended up being this film to talk about what a hero that his mother was, which is outstanding. So, but just like I would have liked to know more of that about that. Like, when did he decide to write that book? You know, what some of those decisions in terms of as she progressed and got a little bit older. Like, how did they take care of her, and how did she manage that grief as she slowly started to lose memory of what happened and everything that she did. So yeah, just things that when it comes to film, like the actual film, we would have liked to see more of. But I assume, and I don't know if this is the case or not, what they want you to do is just go out and learn more about this actual a person and what happened.
Yeah, and maybe the history of what that dictatorship in Brazil looked like, you know, and the atrocities that happened there. Like that makes a lot of sense. I just feel like, you know, if you're going to show us having, you're going to show us that dog dying, you could have showed us, you know, how that accident happened and how that affected.
What was the dog's name?
Damn, it started with a P.
Yeah.
And I know that for sure too.
It was a P because it was named after her boyfriend.
Yeah, it was like Pa something. I'm still here, dog. Let's look it up. Nope, that's not
Didn't come up? Okay.
That pulled up the book, I'm Still Here, A Dog's Purpose Forever.
Okay, that's probably
not
Pim
it.
Pow. Pim Pow.
Pim Pow, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that book, this book was published in 2024.
Stop, Eric. Stop getting...
Hey,
right here.
I got distracted, sorry. Yeah, anyway, I digress. That was my... Again, I don't have many more gripes. It's such a big gripe for me, though, because, like, I was borderline... I was so interested in the beginning of this movie, and then I was so close, not quite, but so close to being bored in the second half, and I feel bad. I feel bad that was the case. It is a true story. It's an important story to be told, but just as a consumer of a film, I gotta be honest with myself, and that's how I felt. So that's why I gave it the 3.5, because, like, if it was on, I definitely would, you know, just for Fernanda Torres alone and the chemistry of the family throughout the film, it would pique my interest. But yeah, not a movie that I think that I would go see. It is a movie you could recommend to people, but that's also like such a selective group, right? Like people that are interested in this type of story or international films. Like I feel like we know people like that, but general audience wise, probably not a movie that would be on most people's radar.
Yeah, and that's why, like, there are just so many different types of films that are on this list for us when it comes to international feature that all give us totally different things. I mean, look at my top 10. It's got Train to Busan, RRR, Banshees of Inisherin, Past Lives, In Bruges, Another Round. Those films don't have anything in common. Like they're all outstanding and some of the best films that I've ever seen. Memories of Murder, like the films that I would have never watched without this. So even if people like general audiences aren't seeking them out, at least we have that category that helps us find these films. So yeah, even if you don't necessarily think that this would be your cup of tea, I certainly still implore you to check it out, just like Eric said, because it is a very important story to tell.
Yeah, I need to watch the Banshees of Inisherin again so I can just give it the 5 that I want to give it. I don't know
I'm
why.
I'm pretty sure I've given it.
You gave it a
5. Yeah, because I was at a 4.5, and I was like, nope, I love that film with every fiber of my being.
I could change it to a 5 and just let bygones be bygones, but I want to see it a second time to solidify it.
Look at the donkeys in the picture.
So good, so good. But yeah, no, like I gotta move that up.
Did I?
Did I? I thought you did.
Cutting off fingers.
Fucking good, dude. God.
I'm gonna start cutting off my fingers and giving them to you. Whenever the podcast is about to end, I'm gonna start cutting off fingers.
Oh man. But guys, that was our episode on it. You know, I don't know that we're already starting to get off topic, which is disrespectful to the film that we just covered, because it was a very great film. If you're still here and you heard the spoilers, it really doesn't take away from your view of the film. Phil kind of mentioned it, like how much can we really spoil about a true story? I think the performances and the chemistry in this movie and even the filmmaking itself are good enough to warrant a guaranteed watch, and at the very least, a good time, something that you can appreciate and you can absolutely put on your film list of things that you need to see, especially if you're trying to catch up on the whirlwind of films that was 2024. So Phil, with that being said, I think we are good to kind of wrap this up and move on to our next international film and continue to add to that list.
Last thing I will bring up before we wrap up here, now that you have seen this, you've seen all the rest of the films that were nominated, would you have given Fernanda Torres the Best Actress nod over Mikey Madison?
That's tough. I also was a big Cynthia Erivo backer.
Yeah. I thought after all that stuff happened, you know, the Enora intimacy stuff, and then Amelia Perez, obviously, and then, with the substance being horror, like they're still fighting that uphill battle. So I thought maybe they would just take the easy way out and give it to her. But honestly, and I love Mikey, I love Honora, one of my favorite films of 2024. But if now seeing this, if they had given it to Fernanda Torres, knowing what I know now, I would not have been upset.
I wouldn't have been upset either. Let me move this over here. I wouldn't have been upset either. No, Best Actress, I'm just looking, who were the other people?
Fernanda Torres, Demi Moore, the one from Amelia Perez, Cynthia Erivo, and Mikey Madison.
And Mikey Madison. Yeah. I mean, like, no, I would have been okay. I would have been okay with the win. I do think I was a big Cynthia Erivo backer just because of how fucking iconic Wicked is and how much it blew me away. But I was more backing Ariana for her category because it was a weaker category, in my opinion. So, yeah, I would say she definitely deserved to be nominated, deserved to be a front runner. I would have been okay with either Fernanda Torres or Mikey Madison. That's kind of where a 1A, 1B situation, you could have given it to either.
Yeah.
And Demi Moore deserves the respect, too. As much as I didn't like the substance.
Yeah.
Which I gave it a 3, so I shouldn't say that. It's just not... I know, it's just not... Anyway, I don't want to do this right now.
Well, Eric likes to hand out 3 out of 5s. What you should not do is give us a 3 out of 5. You should give us a 5 out of 5 on any podcast player, such as Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That is so beneficial to us. And make sure you click the Linktree link in the show notes of this episode and find us on social media. The most important ones being Instagram, TikTok, our growing and flourishing Discord community, as well as over on YouTube. And we are streaming basically every week now with some bonus streams happening all of the time. Make sure you also follow Eric and I's personal accounts. Eric has been putting out a ton of content over on Instagram and TikTok, and I have been on this journey to become a voice actor. So if you want to keep up with our personal stories as well, make sure you follow us there. And I already mentioned, as far as giving us a 5-star review, tag us on social media. Let us know that you're listening. Let other people know that you're listening. All that is so beneficial, and we love to see it. And if you find yourself wanting some extra perks from the podcast and maybe seeing behind the scenes stuff and getting these episodes super early, Eric will let you know more about that before wrapping us up.
So one of the best ways that you could support the show, additionally from the free stuff that Phil mentioned, is Patreon, where patrons of the show are supporting us, and in exchange for that support, they are getting behind the scenes looks, bonus content, and as of this month, very, very, very early access to many of our episodes, as we are starting to get ahead on our episodes as we are adjusting our schedule. So thank you to Briar Stefan, T3 Cato, Vintage Macaroni, Corey from The World Is My Burrito, and Nick Casparo, the author of the Vitellarium series, which was our Creator Spotlight episode for the month of April. Make sure to check out that episode and consider joining our Patreon account. But if you don't do that, that's okay. We'll forgive you. All the free stuff is very much appreciated, and we definitely cannot do it without you. With all that being said, my name is Mr. Eric Almighty. That is my co-host, Phil the Filipino. And please don't forget, we release new episodes for the podcast every Wednesday. And all you got to do is wait for it.
This is the Wait For It podcast.